Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 41 of SoLeadSaturday. The guest we have today, Howard Friedman. He is a chief data scientist, health economist, writer, and data science professor at Columbia University. So let's just welcome him and hear more about his career journey. How did he find his area of interest and managing to lead it? So thank you so much, Friedman. Very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine actually. So moving towards our first question, actually, when I came across your profile long back actually, and I was very impressed. You handled multiple roles and responsibilities along your career journey. You started your career in the Capital One, and then you were researcher, writer, then statistician and health economist, chief data scientist, and you are a data science professor as well. Like you are in the academics as well. So what do you enjoy the most and why?
So it's a really interesting question. I've been doing a lot of work in the public sector, private sector, academia, and writing. Each one has things I really like, and to be very honest, each one has some things I don't like. So what I try to do is actually pull from each one the elements I like, and I see if I can have someone else pick up the elements I don't like. It doesn't always work out that way, but it lets me stay focused on things that I excel in and I enjoy, and try to dish off to other people the things I don't. And I can tell you more about that if you'd like, but truly there's elements in each
It's
one
great,
that I enjoy.
actually. I'm sure that audience would love to hear that.
Okay, sure. So let me take with the private sector work. So my private sector work, I love data analytics, getting involved, crunching the numbers, and discussing that with whether it's business leaders or scientists. I don't like sales. So I always would partner with people who were great at sales and loved it. So that partnership worked well. For writing, I'm not a natural writer. I have to work on it. And in fact, the way I work on it is I make a first draft and then I iterate and then I iterate and I iterate. I don't mind the iteration, but I need good, smart readers. And this is where my family plus my former students come in because they're great. So each one does a little bit of the work I hate, and then I do the stuff I enjoy, and it comes out fine. I don't like grading tests. I have a teaching assistant for that.
Yeah. So that's great, actually, and thank you so much for sharing. And definitely, that is something that you mentioned, right? Practice makes the person perfect. As you mentioned, that you are not a natural writer, but it is something that you always learn by doing it with the iterations as well as getting the feedback from the others.
That's right. And at this point, I've got about 100 publications and 7 or 8 books now. So you get there. You just got to keep kind of figuring out what you do well.
Yes.
And then getting help for the things that you don't do so well.
Yeah. Very wise, and thank you so much for sharing. Moving towards our question, actually, first question is along the line of your statistician being a statistician. So, how much statistics knowledge is important being a data scientist?
Well, let me add the word being a good data scientist. Because there's a lot of people who can just run code. If you're just taking someone's canned code and running code, let's be honest, your job will not be useful. Automation will get rid of that job. I think it's critical to understand statistics because that's what's underlying many of the principles that are involved, not just in the algorithms, but in the usage later. So for me, it's absolutely critical. And when I look at what distinguishes different groups, people who do a lot of the online MOOCs, and I do tons of online courses. I love them. Rarely do they cover stats. The formal education, the coding academies don't cover statistics well either, but the formal degrees normally cover it in a much more substantive way. So that's, I think, a distinction. I think it's critically important.
Okay. And when I got to know that you worked a lot in the data science applications and leadership in the private equity, would you like to share more insights with the audience about it?
Yeah. So private equity is a fascinating place to work because at early stages, they know very little about a company. They have a little bit of information, and they do their best with modeling with missing data. Once they own a company, they get to see everything. And it allows you to really dig in, and you have a choice. You can get hands-on, touching the data yourself. You could be training teams who are doing the data science work, or you could focus at a higher level just as a user. But the beauty of, in particular, private equity is once they own a company, there's nothing hidden. You get to ask and see any data point you want. And so the other thing I love about it is with private equity, when you make a recommendation, let's say for a decision making engine, a new marketing tool, customer segmentation, site selection,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking to people who are on the board. So you're not having a conversation with a middle manager who may not have budget. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking to the people who own the company. So
Mm-hmm.
when they're convinced and they say let's move, you move lightning fast. So
Mm-hmm.
those are things I love about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Actually, I'm really enjoying the talk. So I would rather love to hear more from you. So moving towards our next question is that about the domain. It is always a question actually a lot of students come across like when they are learning it in the university or the professionals who are juggling between their transformation into the career. So when it comes to selecting a domain in this field actually, what advice would you like to give to those people?
My advice is go with your passion. Go
Mm-hmm.
with what you're genuinely interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in many fields. I worked in finance. I worked in restaurants, life insurance, legal systems.
Mm-hmm.
But my heart is in health. That's what I'm most passionate about. And the truth is, I do better work. Why? Because I care more. I mean, I'll do my best work no matter what, but I have deeper insight because I've spent decades doing that. And I think that's really should be always be the thing. For
Mm-hmm.
you or someone else, maybe you're thrilled about telecom or doing something related to marketing, but go for the domain that gets you the most excited
Mm-hmm.
because you'll do a better job.
Yep, yep, yeah. That's really important actually, and good
But
that.
there's another interesting connection to it that's worth saying, which is the beauty of data science is your skills go across all industries.
Yeah.
You have to learn more domain specific knowledge, but the skills translate so smoothly. And that's been true in my career, and I think it's going to be true in other data scientists' careers as well.
Yeah, and I have seen actually a couple of data science leaders actually. Some of them love music and actually, they work with those kind of problems like, voice recognition and music
Mm-hmm.
recognition kind of problem statements in the data science. Some of them like cooking and then they come up with, kind of examples which can relate into the kitchen things and they apply that into the data science. So I feel like data science gives you an opportunity to mix both the things that what you like and you have the opportunity to explore that because everything is a data. So
It is, but your last point is so critical because data is underlying, regardless of whether we're talking about, to your point, music or cooking, or in the examples I gave, whether you're talking about finance or
mhm,
health, um, your skill set should translate over. You still need to learn some subject specific knowledge,
mhm,
but you should be able to translate over. As for what domain should you focus on, there's tons of domains.
mhm,
Look for the ones that you get excited by.
yeah.
And life will also come to you. You're going to get certain job offers and you're not going to get others. And that's what's going to also impact it.
Yep, yep. Thank you so much for sharing. And moving towards our next question is about you have written actually applied statistics technical manuals and data driven books for a lay audience and have drafted two new books on data science. So, would you like to share more about those new books?
I'd be happy to. So, I do write for different audiences, and it's a challenge when you're writing for a lay audience. So, I write a lot of work for technical audiences, scientific peer review papers. But I like targeting for different audiences. So the two books I have almost a final draft of a data science book that's targeted for middle school children. We're
Mhm.
talking sixth, seventh grade,
Wow.
and it's exciting because I think you're already seeing people around that age who are playing with doing coding. I mean,
Mhm.
they have the skills, but it tries to explain the concepts in a way that they can understand. So that's one book. The other one is very much about data science for busy business professionals. So it's your MBA who may have to interact with data scientists, or maybe they just they're going to actually get a budget and they've got to manage it and they're going to hire some people. So it gives them some basic tools to understand what is this subject of data science, what do they need in order to be an effective either manager or participant or even interacting with a data science team. So two books, very different audiences, also at very different stages. The one for middle school children is pretty much done, except for me tweaking around some language. The other one I've only written a chapter, but I'll work on it.
Yeah. That's great, actually, because I always wonder, because when I look for the books online, it's like, you find tons of books talking about machine learning, Python, R, deep learning, and it's like very hard to choose. Like, whenever it comes to the content, I feel it should be more customized. And the way you thought about your books, actually, thinking the audience first and then coming up with some content, I think that is the great idea to look into any book, actually, like when you come up with some new idea when writing a book. So that's great.
But you've got a great point there, which is whether you're giving a speech, a presentation, or writing, whenever you're communicating, you have to ask who's the audience, or
Yep.
else you're going to do a horrendous presentation.
Yep, yep.
A horrible thing to do is have like whatever is your standard PowerPoint and then use that regardless of the audience. That's a bad presenter.
Yep, yep. Thank you, actually. And I love the idea that, you focused on the middle school people, like kids, and then the next one was the busy professionals, actually. Those are like kind of a typical audience, I guess, audience set, who don't have, actually, I guess, that kind of a content available, because whatever you find, it is more like a generic content.
Mm-hmm.
And people always struggle to find that kind of a customized thing.
No, you're right. You're right. A lot of that material is either very high level and
Yes.
it's not useful, or to your point, it's Python coding for machine learning, which neither of those audiences really need at that point.
No, no. I really don't find that, actually, like, fascinating when people come up with those books, because it's very hard from the books to understand. Unless until you do the programming and do the coding, you don't understand it by reading it. So if you want to get an idea of particular business case or something, like, how the data science works, it is a lot more about customized content, and really great that, you come up with something that is more customized.
So
So,
to your point, though, about actually doing the coding, and I think that you're absolutely brilliant about that. When I teach machine learning classes, and I teach them in R and Python, I'll always get one or two students who sit in the back and they just watch the lectures.
yeah,
They don't do any of the exercises, and they say, "Oh, this is how I learn." I always tell them, "You're not learning a thing. You're just pretending."
yeah,
And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, first of all, I've taught for over 20 years, and I know that any student who sits in a programming language based class and doesn't do any programming, it's all going in one ear and out the other."
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you so much, and definitely, I feel students out there, they will find it useful, because they might be going into the same phase, and I have also gone through that phase, actually, when I was pursuing my masters. Maybe just because I had the prior work experience, I was knowing that it is important for me to be, doing the practicals rather than just listening. Because unless until I struggle, I get across the errors and debug my code and find out something, it is not going to be fruitful at all. So it's very important that, you struggle when you are learning, and you challenge yourself. So thank you so much. And moving towards our next question is around, again, you have done the work a lot more in the healthcare domain in the data science. So when we think about data science in healthcare, uh, how do you look into it, actually? What does challenge you more in this field?
So, as I mentioned, while I've touched many fields, health is where I've always been most passionate. My PhD is actually biomedical engineering. And because of that, I look at a field where the technology really has advanced so much. Our ability to acquire data from different data sources is so much more enhanced than it was 5, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The capacity of certain algorithms is so much better. So you look at the image detection for oncology, tumor detection, it's massively advanced. It outperforms most kind of oncologists who try to identify tumors. You look at other areas such as I've done a lot of work on predicting readmissions and predicting mortality, and the quality of the modeling is so much better than it was 5, 10 years ago. The predictive ability is greater because we have richer data sets and better algorithms. And so it's an exciting field. I think it's going to get more and more improvements, but an area that I think you're going to see great applications even more is in things like oncology, where biomarkers and other characteristics from genomics, where you have huge data sets of genes, will get combined with information about treatments to really map the best treatment for this specific patient. And that's really what people have been talking about with personalized medicine for decades. We're making it there. It was a mantra, for decades that people talked about, getting the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. We're much better at it, and it's very much a data science story.
Oh, wow, that's great. And I feel it is a lot more challenging as well. Do you struggle, getting the data at one place when it comes to the healthcare domain?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The access to the data is different. Different countries have different restrictions. For some countries, the data doesn't leave their shores. It's a legal requirement. For groups, you've got, of course, the patient privacy areas. So there's a lot more institutional hurdles that exist, and many of them need to be there. You need to protect patient privacy. But when I compare that to like analysis I've done for restaurant chains, I don't have to deal with those types of restrictions, right? The barriers are far less in that, or in in the banking industry when I was doing predictions of charge-off modeling, I didn't have the same levels of restrictions. So these are things that are part of the domain challenge.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much. And moving towards our next question is about any interesting project experience of data science would you like to share with the audience?
So I have a lot of interesting ones. I'll describe one that is not specifically in health, which we just talked about. I'm going to take you over to one from the restaurant world. So I had a interesting client. They were a very, very large restaurant chain. They had a problem in that they had a whole set of unanticipated cannibalization. What that means is they opened up new restaurants, and suddenly a lot of the older ones were losing revenue. Someone had built for them a predictive model that was specifically trying to estimate the revenue of new locations and, of course, the impact on the old locations. It was a black box model, and I had been given a description of the model. I read the description, I looked at the black box, the inputs, the outputs, and I immediately said, they lied to you. They ripped you off. There's no way the description does what it claims it does. I said, just give me the raw data. I will do a quick model. I took the model. I did nothing more than a random forest. That's all I did. My little model, which I spent just a couple of hours cleaning the data and building it, outperformed the other model, that black box model, by about 15%, 1.5 in terms of prediction accuracy. They had paid $400,000 for the black box model. I told them, since I'd only worked on this for about an hour or two, instead of paying me $400,000 for a better model, why don't you take me out to lunch? I then convinced them, we can do this even better. And this is where it became very important. I worked with their finance team to get other data, because to me, the data source is often the critical factor. The richer data set is often far, far more important than the sophistication of the algorithm. Informative variables will beat fancy algorithm any day. So I worked with the finance team. We made an even better model, which they implemented. They had not had any unanticipated cannibalization to this day. And that's success.
Wow. Yeah. So,
but it wasn't just about me. The final model was working with their finance teams, their subject matter experts, and building something that really was robust that they could use going forward.
Wow. Yeah, this is like a great achievement, I feel, because having the robust model is like a great achievement, I feel, in any modeling.
I agree. And the other thing that strikes me, this was a private equity client. Private equity firms own many, many companies.
Mm-hmm.
So they were pleased. And then, as people think about businesses, they introduced me to some of the other companies that they own and
Mm-hmm.
said, Howard did a great job here, and he also saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars that we ended up arguing with the old consulting firm on. You might want to bring him in. And that was a nice thing.
Wow, that's great actually, and uh, really thankful to have you on the show. Uh, Moving towards our next question, it shows your leadership style, and definitely you are leading the students, actually youth as well. So, what is your leadership style, and any specific leader that you always follow and admire, and why?
Hmm. Well, I had great managers and advisors over the years, so I did try to learn a lot from them. One of the most important things I learned is listen and be humble. So when I'm doing something, I always want to understand from the subject matter experts,
Mm-hmm.
what do they know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives me hints about other data sources, other variables. For example, one of the first big models I ever built was a fraud detection model for consumer finance.
Mm-hmm.
But I started not by even coming near the data. I started by doing interviews with fraud investigators, former police officers, and had them walk me through the big cases, explaining to me what were they seeing, what did this person do, how did they get through our systems, what are the hints that you would have seen earlier on if you had been looking at this case.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me identify new data sources, new variables. We were able to implement a model that was substantially better than any of the models out there. But it
Mm-hmm.
was all due to being humble enough to listen to people who have no analytics background, but who
Mm-hmm.
had great insight. And I think that's a lot of it. So
Mm-hmm.
listening, be humble, and also respect the fact that it's the data sources and the richness of the data that's the most critical factor in predictive modeling, and not whether you've used the latest and latest AI versus good old fashioned regression. Those are important, but you're operating on the margin usually there in predictive modeling versus having a very, very rich data set versus a very poor sparse data set.
Okay, so I think you highlighted a very valid point that it's very important when it comes to learning. It's a lot more important that you listen. And one more important learning that you shown is that when you were working for that particular problem, fraud detection problem statement, you actually went for finding out the real scenario. Before you are build something in the modeling, actually it is I think that is kind of a best approach to at least understand first the system that you are going to work with, and then come up with some insights, because that would be more fruitful, I guess, useful. uh,
Yeah, I mean, the reverse, and I see this happen all the time. People take whatever data they have around,
mhm.
build a model, and then later learn that there's massive sample bias or they're missing critical things, and they just produce garbage.
Yes.
And they lose credibility.
Mm-hmm.
People, your first impression will last.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a positive, great. And if it's a negative, that's a problem because people will always remember you as that person who built a useless model by not understanding the data or the problem at all. And you don't want that reputation.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and I just feel like I just keep continue and keep you asking the questions more and more. But I would like to come towards the closure of this show, and I would like to ask the last question, which is like a tips and advice to the students or the professionals who are looking to enter or transform their career in the data science or grow in this specific field.
Well, I would have to say that it's an exciting field.
Mm-hmm.
It's a competitive field,
Mm-hmm.
and I think some people they look at these projections and they say, "Oh, there's all these jobs that are expected to happen," and the answer is maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is be passionate, do
Yeah.
the things that you enjoy. You can't be an expert at everything.
Yeah.
These silly little unicorn diagrams of that you're an expert in 7 different things at the same time. No one is. What
Mm-hmm.
you really want to do is find areas that you really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
excel in those, and then don't have huge blank areas where you're just completely incompetent. Know some data visualization, even if you're not an expert. I'm not an expert in data visualization.
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to know some basic programming in other languages. You can't just say that, well, for me, it's either Python or nothing. That doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also, recognize that there are areas which you will love. Go
Mm-hmm.
after that. And also, and this is a critical thing, make yourself distinguished. What I mean by that is, if your resume just talks about all the exciting work you've done on the Titanic and Iris data set,
Mm-hmm.
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because those are canned data sets. Go after real world problems. You can grab the data. That's the beauty of this being 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Show people that you can solve problems that are relevant for the real world. That's critical.
Yep. Yep. Yes. And thank you so much. It was really very wise advice. Anybody to have, actually, irrespective of whichever area they want to get into or grow into. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate all your time being on the show.
My pleasure. This was great. You're a fantastic interviewer, so thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much, and audience, definitely you are going to enjoy this episode. He has a lot more to share because he actually deals with the students. So I would encourage you to watch this episode. And as I always say, until we meet, happy leading. Let's sit together. Stay safe. Bye for now.